Hello and welcome to this week's episode of #Leadership What's on Your Mind. Remember, if you don't already know, we're a podcast to make you stop and think about your leadership journey by speaking to amazing people with amazing stories and experts in their field. So if you're listening to us on your podcast provider, make sure you hit follow. And if you're watching us on the YouTube channel, make sure you hit subscribe. So today we are speaking to Andy. How are you doing, sir?
I'm very well, thanks, Stuart. How are yourself?
I'm good, thank you. I'm really excited about this one. I met Andy about a month ago at our inaugural Star Development UK Golf Day. And it was amazing to meet Andy and the team as well from On Course Foundation. With our connection with Carden Park, and the senior pro there is an ambassador of your charity. And then when I heard it was an ex-military charity as well, it was a no-brainer to link up with On Course Foundation. So we're going to cover that a little bit more detail after, but Andy's got an amazing story, amazing perspective, and we're going to talk about the whole leadership thing as well. So without further ado, let's get this started. So as I hit the 20-minute timer, Andy, if you can introduce yourself to the audience, tell us about who you are and a little bit about your background as well.
Right, so I'm Andy Stevens. I was born in 1962. I was brought up through the 70s, very influenced by what I was seeing and hearing in the news. And one of the things that I did see was the British bomb disposal teams operating in Northern Ireland and dealing with improvised explosive devices, which then let the population get on with their normal lives. And I watched this on what was called the nationwide programme, the equivalent of the One Show. And I turned around to my parents as a teenager and said, I'm going to do that. And so that was my ambition from about the age of 14 or so.
Wow. Can I just ask, sorry to interrupt, but what was their reaction to that?
At the time, I think they went, okay, he's shown a fair bit of interest in the military anyway, so we'll just leave it at the military. And we won't worry about too much about the specifics at this stage of the game. But I had no idea what an operational tour would put parents through. And so therefore, when my eldest son joined the army, he did 2 tours in Afghanistan as a private soldier with the Royal, well, a trooper with the Royal Tank Regiment. And I then understood what I had put my parents through, because you worry. As a parent, you worry. As someone on an operational tour, you're actually getting on with it. You don't overly have time to worry because you're doing it.
Yeah, amazing. So we're going to dig into that a little bit more. Before we get so excited and forget about the leadership side of it, we're going to ask you the questions. Because again, I was going to do a little bit of just promoting the charity, but it'd be not right if I didn't ask you, because you've got such an amazing experience and perspective on all this. So I'm really looking forward to this. So we're obviously #leadership. What's on your mind? What comes to your mind when you hear just the word leadership?
There's so much that comes to my mind when I think about leadership, because it's all about leadership at different stages in your life and also different stages of your employment and business needs. So I think back to the military and going to Sandhurst as a 19-year-old. I was commissioned as a basic infantry officer. All of us that went through Sandhurst, you were trained to lead 30 infantry soldiers with basic infantry skills, and that was it. So therefore, you first and foremost, you had to do the same job as your soldiers. So you had to be fit, you had to be able to fight, you had to be able to deal with casualties, operate in a nuclear, chemical and biological environment, so that you then understood the stresses and strains that your soldiers were under. You needed to have experienced exhaustion, hunger, and so the training at Sandhurst, it is hard, it is tough, but it has to be, so that you can understand your soldiers better, and you can also then, when you're giving them a mission or a task to complete, as a leader, you're thinking about, have they had enough rest? Have they had enough food? Are they trained to carry out this role? How much time do I need to actually rehearse what we're going to do? Do I need any other specialist equipment, etc.? And so that was the start of my leadership journey, was that basic level of understanding task needs, team needs, and individual needs. So that was the start of the journey.
Yeah, well, I'm going to press you a little bit on this, because we always now ask about your personal leadership journey. And on the face of it, you've just said that was where it started. But I'm just wondering, is there any foundations of that leadership journey that were earlier on? So whether it was a light bulb moment at the time, or whether it was just on reflection now, like, where do you think your leadership journey started? Was there anything even before that? You mentioned about being 14 and looking at aspiring to being in the military. Where did that urge come from?
So I'm not. I was interested in the military. I was interested in military history. My father had served in the military, but only in national service. Yeah. So for all of my life, he'd been a purchasing engineer. But my parents actively encouraged me then on a route of joining the army that would lead to commissioning. And so they very gently and very carefully, and looking back skillfully, steered me towards what was called Welbeck College.
Ah, right.
And Welbeck College sadly no longer exists. It folded about 3 years ago, but it was founded in 1952. And it was designed as a feeder route for the technical arms and services of the army only to start off with. But post-Cold War, it then looked to do tri-service and even small numbers going into the civil service, but on the technical side. Yeah. And so I actually went to Welbeck College when I was 16 to do 2 years of sixth form. And there they had a cadet force, so a combined cadet force. Our PT staff was an Olympic canoeist, Captain Lillywhite, who was fantastic. And so we were introduced to new things that in a school in Manchester I'd have never been exposed to. Yeah. So I was exposed to rock climbing, mountaineering, kayaking. I learned to play hockey, and again that wasn't taught at my school in Manchester. And so it was a great experience. Educationally, it was okay. I may have done better back in Manchester, but when you add it as a package, you just go, this was very special. And you're with a cohort and you're all focused on the same thing. You've been selected, you've been interviewed beforehand, and you're all on this pathway. You're like, salmon swimming upstream. Yeah. and you're learning from each other as well at the same time. Because unlike a normal sort of comprehensive school that I'd come from, where people are divergent and going off to do different things in life, we're all focused on the same thing.
Yeah, John, I'm so pleased I asked now, because like I said, I'm obviously acutely aware that to turn up at Sandhurst, there's got to be a process of recruiting people with leadership qualities. And again, what you've just shared there is the foundations and the building blocks of how you ended up there in the first place, of the environment that you came from. So amazing. So from almost Sandhurst onwards, then, to sort of put you in that sort of time frame, we always ask guests to think about an impact moment or a person that's had a big influence on your leadership journey, whether that be positive or negative. So is there anything or anyone that you have in your journey up to now that has had an impact on your leadership?
I've been really lucky. I only had one period where I had a negative influence on who the negative side actually influenced me positively.
Okay.
And that was really interesting. We had a guy who was his leadership style was very autocratic, very focused on achieving the mission and task, but not so much looking after the team. Whereas I have, throughout my career, I've focused on, okay, what's the task need? What does the team need? But also knowing that that team is made up of individuals.
Yeah.
So he was very focused on task, forgetting that the team, yes, he wanted the numbers, but it's then making sure that the morale of those numbers and all the individuals, that they are being looked after, cared for, their careers are being progressed, developed, etc. And there was one particular incident where we were going to go on exercise. So this is, again, I'm still a junior officer. I'm not old enough yet to start my bomb disposal training, and I'm in a combat supplies role, and we're going to go on an annual exercise for 2 weeks. One of my junior NCOs, so at a low level of management within the platoon, so 30 people, he's come to me 2 days before the exercise starts to say that his fiancée of the last 3 years has called off the marriage, and he desperately needs to get from the UK to Germany to sort this out. And so I go, okay, well, he's a good guy. As a platoon, we can manage without him for a few days at the start of the exercise, so it's not critical. So I go, okay, understand. And he's not a wide boy, he doesn't mess around, he doesn't cause any problems at all. And I think, okay, this guy needs to be looked after. So I approach my boss, who's a major, so he is 2 ranks above me. I'm a lieutenant at the time. And I say, look, Corporal so-and-so, he's got a welfare issue. I'm really happy that the platoon can cope. Please can I have permission for him to have emergency leave? No. And I thought, God, what a complete arsehole. And you think, okay. So he then disappears the next day and he's not at work. We then go to a weekend and I think, okay, let's just see if he gets himself back, because I know he's gone. My platoon staff sergeant knows he's gone. My platoon knows he's gone. And everyone is keeping really stum about this. So he gets out to Germany, sorts it out over the weekend. He can't get back for the start of the exercise. He goes to a military unit, an ordnance unit in Germany, and hands himself in first thing on Monday. And saying, look, I'm officially AWOL, but I'm kind of not, because I've only been absent for a day, but I'm going to exercise. And so my OC then decided to have him court-martialed. And I then said, well, I want to defend him. Right. And I was actually put onto a task that would take me out of the country for 3 weeks over the time of the court-martial. So I learned so much from that incident of how not to do things.
Yeah.
And really frustratingly.
Yeah.
And it was fascinating that this guy then got promoted, and he went to do a certain job, and he approached me and he said, look, you've been brilliant. As a lieutenant, you've done superbly. And this environment that he was going to had lots of junior officers in it. And he said, I really want you to come as the senior subaltern, the senior junior officer, to provide the role model for these guys. And I just, right. And so I was very diplomatic. I said, no, I think I was posted to Germany. I said, no, I think I need to go to Germany to broaden my career experiences, but thank you for thinking of me.
Do you think that was a little bit of him realizing his, sometimes you call them the blind spots, the things you don't realize, and maybe he'd reflected and he knew that that was somebody that he needed next to him?
Yes. Yeah. And later in my career, I have played that role. For someone that knew they had a blind spot, and they were really happy to have me, to the degree, and this was when I was a regimental second in command, for someone who was, in fact, for 2 COs who were both high flying, but their they were pretty good on the welfare side, but they needed someone to really, you know, have a feel of what was going on.
Yeah.
The second in command of a regiment, working alongside the RSM, you have a really good feel of what's going on amongst this 900 person organisation.
Yeah.
And effectively, as the 2IC, you are running the regiment on behalf of the commanding officer.
Yeah.
And that again, was a brilliant. I love that job.
Yeah.
Hard work. My goodness, it was hard. Really long days. Yeah. You know, Friday evening, I'd still be in the office. This concept of Poets' Day, piss off early, tomorrow is Saturday, for a second in command does not exist.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I love that. So
yeah.
I'm so pleased we've had that kind, because again, I know you've got such a wealth of experience in that environment. It's phenomenal. So obviously we met through the charity that we are supporting into next year's event as well, and it's going to be bigger, better, bolder. It's going to be phenomenal. I can't wait for it. I'm going to give you some more details at the end of this, but could you tell everybody a little bit about what On Course Foundation is, what it is for you, so we can let everybody know about it?
Well, the first thing is the On Course Foundation was founded by a guy called John Simpson, and he worked for IMG, the sports managerial side, and he personally managed the likes of Nick Faldo and Bernard Langer. So he was steeped in golf. But interestingly, he'd suffered from polio and therefore was disabled, has a calipered leg to this day, walks with a stick. And he was very influenced by what was happening in Iraq and Afghanistan, and so many young people coming back with severe physical trauma, with legs, arms missing, blinded in one eye, and all sorts of really bad injuries that as a nation we'd not seen probably since the Second World War, although we probably historically were aware of it over the Korean War as well. And he knew that golf was something that a disabled person could do on a level playing field with a physically capable person. So John set up the charity back in 2011. So last year was supposed to be our 10th anniversary. And this year we effectively celebrated that because of COVID.
Yes.
But what he did, he tried this out, found a couple of really good coaches, including Di Llewellyn, who you've already met, and they have learnt as well, and they have a great coaching technique to see what someone is physically capable of doing. How can they hold a club with one arm? How do they swing sufficiently to drive a ball off a tee off two artificial legs?
Yeah.
And you've seen it. And it is amazing. And I'm amazed. And then the charity then focused on initially people with physical wounds from Iraq and Afghanistan. That then expanded out to include other conflicts. So we have one member in his 70s, our oldest member, Jerry, who lives up in Glasgow, and he lost a foot out in the Oman in the Radfan campaign on an anti-personnel mine there.
Wow.
And then at the same time, I think that there was starting to be more awareness of mental injuries, the hidden wounds. And I am one of those people. I had a breakdown in 2013 relating to my service in 1982. As a result of it, I was diagnosed with post-traumatic stress disorder. I am very stress sensitive. So the concept of me working to a contract, deadlines and things like that in a modern, busy, demanding work environment which extends to the Ministry of Defence nowadays, was something that I couldn't cope with. So I was medically discharged, and I was really lucky that on leaving the services, I was signposted to the On Course Foundation, and I've never looked back.
Had you played golf before?
Yes, but only hacking.
Yeah.
I hacked around. I'd managed to get myself a handicap of 28.
Yeah.
I didn't play very much. Immediately on my breakdown, I did. It was the only thing that would get me out of the house. Didn't want to play with anyone. Didn't want to talk to anyone. But I would go out on the golf course. And it's interesting that when you are focusing on one of these, how little comes into your head apart from this ball.
Yeah.
And this ball gets bigger and bigger and bigger and bigger, and it takes away everything else. And you're thinking about, what are the hazards on the course? Which club am I going to use? You hit your shot, you're then walking down the course, you're looking at where it is, what's the angle into the green, what's the wind direction, where are the trees, whatever. And it's a great form of therapy. It really is tremendous.
Amazing. Yeah, so again, like, that's almost our 20 minutes up, but I'm going to go on a little bit more, because it's amazing to be able to support, and we had 10 of the charity members at the first inaugural golf day that we had at Carden Park. It's going to be on for next year as well, the 22nd of June next year, so we'll be advertising that in due course. But it's amazing to have that, and it's golf as a therapy. It's definitely, I was talking to my wife about this, that the challenges of COVID, of setting up and running your own business, the fact that I can now go out on the golf course and meet people and have those conversations over something that I'm quite passionate about. It's skill, it's outdoors, just seeing green. There's a psychology, isn't there, between seeing more green and being outside that can help you. Yes,
it's huge. I mean, one of the things that the On Course Foundation does, it's not just about learning to play golf, and we are coached. We learn about the etiquette of golf. We then have had 2- and 3-day events where an outside speaker will come from the broad spectrum of golf industries to talk to us about golf club management, golf club manufacture, greenkeeping, golf retail. And so we're exposed to a whole series of things, because the purpose of what John Simpson's abiding foundation to the whole thing was to say, I want to do recovery, rehabilitation, and then when people are ready, employment.
Yeah.
On Course Foundation members are now active as head mechanic at Wentworth. We have a greenkeeper at Turnberry, also at Kingsfield up in Scotland. We have a whole host of us are now artisan greenkeepers, including myself. And also we've now got a group of us who are now involved in marshalling major events around the UK. And this year we've had On Course Foundation members supporting the British Masters at the Belfry, at the Scottish Open at the Renaissance Club, and most recently a small number of us were down in Wales at the Celtic Club supporting the Welsh Open there.
Amazing. We were just chatting as we started recording this about how good it is for me following you on your social medias now, because you pop up in all these amazing events, and again, it's just a fantastic opportunity that the On Course Foundation and John has created. He is going to be coming on the podcast at some point as well, so when we match diaries, so I'm really keen to get him as the founder, but also you as a recipient of that membership. So Annie, we're running out of time. We've gone over a little bit, but just thank you so much for coming and sharing your experience with the charity. It's a fantastic thing to be involved in, and for the business. Next year, like I said, the 22nd of June at Carden Park, we should have, I was just saying to you as we jumped on, that we will have an Olympic bronze, silver and gold medalist at the event as well. So it's all around supporting the charity, but also talking about high performance. Whether that goes onto the golf course or not, I'm not too sure. But it should be a fantastic day like it was this year. So Andy, thank you so much for your time today.
Stuart, it's been a real pleasure, and I wish you and what you're doing all success for the future.
Thank you, and I can't wait to see you again next year. We might bump into each other before then. Who knows? Who knows?
Right. Well, you never know. You might have me doing another one of these in the future.
Yeah, who knows? So, ladies and gents, I hope you really liked that episode. If you're listening to us on your podcast provider, make sure you hit follow. If you're watching us on the YouTube channel, make sure you hit subscribe, and make sure you hit the link to go and have a look at the On-Course Foundation and the amazing work that they do. And I look forward to seeing you next week. Take care. Bye.